Ladies and gentlemen, Hans Niemann is back. Recently here in 2024, we saw him compete in the Speed Chess Championship against Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. But now, it is time for the United States Chess Championship, and it got started with a bang. The very first day of the event was a big moment for Hans for two reasons. Number one, he has been publicly and privately at odds and in what the kids call a beef with the St. Louis Chess Club for quite some time now. He's been very public about the fact that he is not receiving invitations to play events in St. Louis. Now, I've covered that subject extensively. If you don't know about that and the hotel room incident and all the emails and correspondence back and forth, you can look that up after you watch this video. But he has to play this event because he's one of the top 6 players in America. So Hans Niemann now has a chance to become one of the youngest United States chess champions ever. And the second reason why the first day is big for him is he is playing Fabiano Caruana, the incumbent champion, the best player in US, 1A, 1B with Hikaru. And Hans's record against Fabiano in recent years is 0 wins and 5 losses. It's a massive first round for him. Now, you may be wondering what's going on with the lighting. I'm recording this at 1 in the morning. The reason is tomorrow I have to wake up very early and I have to drive long distance. So I'm recording this overnight and I will it will upload in the morning. And I do just want to say, I've been covering a lot of things on this channel, telling you what's coming up. I'm excited to announce that I'm going to Europe to play against Pia Kramling in a match, and there will be a fan event on November 3rd in Stockholm. Tickets are now live. And if they're not live when you click on this, they will be live in a few hours. And if they're not live in a few hours, they'll be live by the end of the weekend, I promise. But I was supposed to wake up and get the news. So I'm recording this overnight. They might be live. Link is in the description. Come see myself and Anna Kramling, Stockholm, Sweden, November 3rd. If you're Swedish, say hello. If you're from other parts of Europe, say hello. It's going to be a fun time. So United States Chess Championship, Hans Niemann, Fabiano Caruana, and we're off with a bang. I can't wait. I can't wait to see. Hans has been hibernating a bit ever since the Speed Chess Championship. He offered me a training camp with him and Vladimir Kramnik. Sadly, I am not particularly liquid at the moment, so I couldn't afford that training camp, a little bit too expensive, but very curious to see his growth. And he goes back to the true and tried with e4. Fabiano plays e5. This is round 1. You're kind of easing into it. If this was round 8 or 9 of the U.S. Championship, maybe Fabiano's going to play a Sicilian defense. But we have e5, knight f3, knight c6. And Hans plays the opening that he plays all the time, which is the Italian. The Italian and the Spanish are the top 2 openings here. Everything else is kind of like meaningless, unless you're a beginner, in which case the Ponziani is just absolutely fantastic. You should totally play the Ponziani. These guys, unfortunately, know everything. So we have bishop c4, we have bishop c5. Fabiano does not opt for knight f6, which kind of forces white to play d3. I don't think there's anything in particular about bishop c5. But here after castles, something kind of interesting happens, all right? So at this point, black basically plays knight f6, d6. There are some lines black plays knight f6 and castles and then plays a very quick d5, but overall it's pretty rare. And what white does here is play c3, d3, and then decide, am I going to put the bishop on g5? Am I going to advance on the queen side? I'm usually going to put my rook on e1. You can look at these Italians and look at them 100 times. They all look the same. I don't mean actual Italians. Like, actual Italians look pretty different for the most part. But position Italians, they don't all look like, Luigi and Mario. Contrary to popular belief. I know that might shock you. But here Fabiano does something fascinating, okay? So he plays d6. And like I just said, you play d6. Hans will, play some move, play c3. Obviously, he's trying to go d4. And, now if black plays knight f6 and white plays this move d4, basically black is going to come back and have pressure. Fabiano now plays in a way I haven't seen ever in my life. Ever. He plays bishop b6. All right, he played d6. Obviously, he's going to go here. He's going to play h6. He now plays h6. Hans plays rook e1. And Fabi plays queen f6. I mean, it's like we're back to 500 elo. I mean, you see the queen come out to that square, hoping for some form of a scholar's mate up until maybe like 11, 1200 max. That's because it's a weird piece to bring out, right? Like, the queen in many ways is going to be shellacked, walloped, bamboozled. I mean, it's not really where the queen stands, but clearly it's the prep. Now, if you check the opening database, I mean, almost no games, obviously, like bishop b6, d3, h6, and then in this position to play queen f6 is insane. But there have been a couple of people who have played it. One of which is a Spanish grandmaster by the name of Ivan Salgado. And, you know, Fabiano, I think, has a person on his team, Miguel Santos, I think. I hope I'm not making this up. And he's a very strong Spanish grandmaster, but he's not the guy I just said, because not all Spanish people are the same, contrary to popular belief. So, I mean, this is cool. But, like, okay, let's see. Now, Hans plays b4. You know, Hans thinks for a little while and goes, look, I can play b4, a4 like part of my plan, or I can play knight bd2, but there's no reason to rush with knight bd2 because I think black wants to go g5, g4. So by the time I'm rotating, g4 now just simply wins the game for black. So he plays b4. Oh, my neck is so stiff, I want to go to sleep. Now if g5, which is sort of the point, you play a4. If g4, you actually just play a5 and you trap the bishop. So after a4, black will probably have to respond with the a-pawn, let's say a6. And now maybe Hans is considering things like, well, he can't play rook a2 because then g4 is still strong. But maybe he'll play like bishop e3 or rook f. Even rook f1 is not completely stupid when white doesn't really mind all of this. He actually thinks the space advantage is completely fine for him. But when you play b4, you know, you're ready for a fight, all right? Now, Fabi then plays knight e7. And this is where it gets weird for me. Because Fabi spent 9 minutes on queen f6. I mean, you never in a million years play queen f6 offhand. But then, to spend another 14 minutes on knight e7, I do have to wonder, like, what happened? Now, he's probably going to give an interview and everything. He's going to analyze his own game, and I'm very curious to hear his thoughts. Like, when I see a guy play queen f6, I'm always like, well, you know, you look at the engine, you go, did he have it memorized? Now, he plays knight e7, obviously. That's sort of the point. But he's got to use his g-pawn. Hans tries to trap the bishop. Fabiano answers back with a5. We have b5, and we have knight d8, and a very simple continuation here for white, which is to trade off the dark square bishops, okay? Now, Fabi plays knight e6. He's not taking. He doesn't want to take because rook e3 is good. And by the way, because you put your queen here, fe3 is also maybe kind of good. Maybe rook a2, rook f2. Hello? I got a double attack coming on the f-file, and you kind of facilitated it, you know, by putting the queen on f6. So he plays knight e6. Hans just keeps improving. Hans is a really fast player, too. Like, he plays quickly. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on people. Fabi puts the knight on f4, so he's concluded the journey. The knight on f4 stands really well. And Hans plays d4, very principled move, spends a lot of time on this move, attacks the center of the board, says we're not going to trade dark square bishops. And now you really just start wondering, when is Fabi going to go g5? Because he could have played it like 3 moves ago, and it really does seem to be the kind of major idea of the position. I don't know. g5, I'm not a backseat gamer, but it looks very natural. And the top move of the engine here in response is bishop to d5. I mean, I don't even, maybe the guys saw that, and maybe the point simply is like, you have pressure, and also you want to go knight c4, and maybe you even want to go c4, c5, like in some positions, not at the moment, obviously, but bishop d5 is a crazy move, and like if black takes, the center is opening up. If black doesn't take, you know, then white plays knight c4 and just really improves the position. I don't know. I mean, if the guys saw this, then God bless them. But Fabi, he plays bishop g4, right? So, clearly 17 minutes did not go into this move. He obviously considered a kingside attack, and again didn't play g5. But again, it seems like the point of the opening. But okay, bishop g4 obviously is fine. Hans kicks out the bishop, and he doesn't play bishop d5 because at this point it's stupid because black can castle queenside, so that doesn't work. But he goes for a similar idea, which is bishop f1, which to the untrained eye, bishop f1 is demented, right? Like, what are we doing? What? You give this position to a beginner, and you ask them, what is the best move here for white? Out of a room of 100 beginners, not a single one will say bishop f1. Out of a room of 100 people rated 2,200, I'm not sure how many would say bishop f1, like 5 max? It's a very hard move. It's the best move. It's one of the best moves. Bishop e2 is the other one. Bishop f1 is just to go knight c4 because that's the only way to make any progress, is that if you want to trade off some pieces here, you have to move the bishop back to f1. That's the only way. You have no other alternative. You can't play two. And now, my friends, this is the final moment that Fabiano Caruana had to go here. And the position is in the balance. He's got to go g5. Hans, by the way, might play g4, which is crazy because now black can play h5. And then you can castle long. I mean, like, there are some crazy lines here after g5. I'm trying to think of some. I mean, by the way, like, for example, g3, trying to kick out the knight, long castle. You can't really take the knight because you get the open g file, and you're still going to lose the bishop. So, I mean, Fabi, he had like 4 moments he could have went g5. He just never did. And then not only did he not go g5, he castled. He castled. So now g5 is probably forever off the table. And you know who is going to go for the g-pawn attack? First, Hans plays rook c1, just preparing the opening of the c-file. By the way, another final moment that g5 can be played. Another final moment. Like, Fabi could have played it here, on the previous move, on the 13th move, like on the 8th move, on the 9th move. Fabi, again, exits the position to put pressure on this pawn. And here comes Hans Niemann, who needed one invitation to play g4. So, the knight on f4 was comfortable. Obviously, Fabi didn't like something, so he kind of overthought it. He's now down to 16 minutes versus 52. This man is on the ropes. And I'm talking like Powhatan versus Roundtree. All right? He's getting bombed. All right? He's ducking. He's weaving. But Hans comes in with g4. Right around here, I saw the game because I was out. I was, I'm a busy guy, I'm busy planning fan events in Stockholm. Tickets should be in the description. No, but seriously, I was like, what is going on? Bishop g6. Hans is now within striking distance of a decisive advantage if he plays one move here, which you would think after the move g4 is a pretty natural follow-up. If you said g5, you're wrong. But if you said h4 to go g5, you're right. I'm threatening to straight up trap the queen. Like, queen is trapped. You got to sack the knight to escape. Now, after h4, right, like, look, Hans played g4. His next move he played instantly. He played his next move instantly. And it was genius, but it doesn't work. And that's probably what Fabiano saw. And after g4 and bishop g6 and this knight sacrifice, the advantage is kind of gone. But if he played h4 here, I don't know what black's next move is. Clearly Fabiano did because he saw this. Maybe he was going to take in the center of the board after this, but like g5 is still a threat. So the problem with this is black has to make way, right? He's got to clear a piece out. So let's say black plays bishop h7. White goes g5. Black goes queen g6, and you lose the central pawn. Oh, sorry. No, you don't lose the central pawn, because if pawn takes, you lose the bishop, and you lose the pawn here. I apologize. Now you have this, and the queen is trapped again. The queen is trapped again. In this version, the queen is trapped. That's if bishop h7. If the knight retreats, then after something like g5, pawn takes, queen d8, there are some lines the center pawn can be taken, but you still have to be careful. White is still much better after something like bishop h3. Okay, much better. Like, you don't have the eval bar when you're playing, right? So it's very easy to say. But h4 is a very juicy move, and it is a move in the wheelhouse of Hans Niemann. But he calculates a line here. This line is so wicked. Watch how, like, brilliant these guys are. He sacrifices his knight in the center of the board. Same kind of concept as you saw earlier. Black takes back. Knight for a pawn. D takes e5. Queen takes e5. Knight f3. The queen is trapped. It has to take. Right? Now, bishop b6. With a discovered attack on the queen. You took your piece back, and the queen is attacked, and the queen is trapped. It's trapped. You can offer a trade, but I have bishop c7, knight c7, rook e7. This is unbelievable. But Fabi saw a step ahead and finds rook d8. Cold-blooded move. Fabiano is a bit of a content creator himself and a Gotham fan. Danger levels. Your queen is attacked. You can ignore the threat by creating equal or exceeding danger. And the wicked thing about this position is that after rook takes e4, rook takes d1, both rooks are hanging. So after rook d8, Hans plays knight d4. And I have a feeling something here, as you see the time spend, started realizing, wait a minute, my position's not as good as I thought. Because, like, for example, knight d2, queen f4, bishop e3, the queen gets out. And I think Hans might have thought that after bishop g6 and this crazy combination, take, queen e5, right? Like, think about what Hans calculated from g4. He calculated g4, bishop g6, knight e5, d-e5, d-e5, queen e5, knight f3. When the queen is basically trapped, it has to go to e4, bishop b6 with the discovered attack on the queen. But the cold shower counterattack eludes you because you look at all of the things that I've just drawn on the board, and that, that might have escaped him, and maybe he would have settled for h4. h4 would have gone a totally different direction. The engine is gasping for air for black if you play h4. It's crazy. But he enters this wicked sequence. Maybe Hans thought, worst case scenario, it's a draw. Right? Worst case scenario. I mean, I'm up a pawn. I have the two bishops. The position's pretty dynamic, but just b6. And Fabiano now begins a consolidation process. The bishop goes to b4. Fabi takes on d4. Pawn takes d4. Rook takes d4. Attacking the queen, attacking the bishop. There was a knight hanging, by the way. You go queen e2. He takes the bishop, takes the knight, takes the pawn, takes. Nope, doesn't trade the queen. And now the position is around equal. Fabi's got a minute, though. Can you believe it? A minute versus 36. Hans Niemann is so fast. It sucks playing this guy. He is so fast. But the good news is, even though he's going to put some pressure here, Fabi's good. And remember that in this classical time format, you get bonus time on the 40th move. I don't care how ugly the rooks are. His rooks are also pretty ugly. They got a little crossover there. F6, bishop g2, and rooks are falling off the board. Hans continuing to pressure. Fabi gets his 30 minutes back. And not much happened from this point forward. As we went to a rook endgame, Fabi went to the 2-on-1, but this is an easy draw at this level. You just have to know the Philidor position, or you got to know how to not lose king and pawn versus king. Now, I got to tell you, after losing 5 games to Fabiano, this is a great game for Hans to start the U.S. Championship with. I would argue he drew from a position of relative strength, and clearly the opening was going well. And I think if this game was played in a later round, at which point his confidence was already there, he might have had already like a win under his belt. I feel like Hans doesn't go for any of this nonsense. It's not nonsense, but... And then he goes for h4. If he plays h4 in this game, he very well could get a win over Fabiano Caruana. Imagine starting the U.S. Championship like that for both of them. So we're going to keep an eye on this tournament. There's also the U.S. Women's Championship. There was a couple of decisive games there. The men, really started off today with kind of they had some interesting games. Like this game was interesting, but they made 6 draws. So they're easing into it. I will be covering this event, maybe not every single day, but obviously if Hans does something sick, I'm going to cover it. If he loses, I'm going to cover it. He's the most popular player in the tournament. What do you want me to do, right? I mean, we're straight up going to watch if he's going to become the United States chess champion. Some of you may be wondering why Hikaru is not playing. He doesn't want to. That's the simple reason. He prefers to focus on streaming, content creation, and I think he's only going to play in classical tournaments that like help to qualify for the candidates. I think that's what the story is. So Hikaru would be the top seed in this tournament. We're not going to get to see Hans Hikaru in Classical, but good start for Hans. It's 1:40 a.m. I'm going to go to sleep. But if you want to see Anna Kramling and myself in Stockholm, November the 3rd, after my match versus Pia Kramling, I'm going to be talking about all these things every day, not because I'm trying to hit you all over the head with promotion and advertisement. It's so you know what's coming up. So you don't get there and go, what? I didn't know this was happening, because I'm talking about it every damn day. So if you need a friendly reminder, here's what's coming up. Cool? See you all tomorrow. Well, it's already tomorrow. See you all the next day. See you whenever. Get out of here.